Well, first off, from my wife, Wendy, and from me, we really do hope that everybody's safe and everybody's healthy. And if you've had someone that's kind of gotten caught up and sick or even worse in this, we feel for you, we pray for you. So we wanted to say that before we start anything, because that's important to us. So Kevin's right. I am more coming on this. I love sharing, but I love sharing when a friend asks. So regardless of what I was doing tonight, I was going to make sure I was on this because we'll get to this in a little bit, but relationships are important, and you never know when they come in and out in your life. And we're all moving so fast in today's coaching world that sometimes people do leave us for a while, then they come back in. But if it's a true relationship, then whenever they're on the other end of the line and they need something, you just do it. So from that standpoint, and Kevin, you know how I do these things when things pop into my head. So I was just thinking something. Do you mind if I lean over real quick?
Not at all, Coach.
Welcome to my house. I'm in my office, my home office, and my desk. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right there. And on the corner of my desk are some sheets that I look at first thing every morning. I wasn't going to talk about this, but when you were talking, it just popped into my head. So obviously we're in challenging times, and we all know that, and we all react differently to that. So too do our players. So I was on the road in Boston. I had just finished on March 11, the morning. I spoke to a special forces training program for people who want to become SEALs or pararescue jumpers. And I got done that, drove, it was in New Hampshire, then drove about 2 hours down to Boston, got a hotel that night. And that's when it broke on the 11th, for me, at least my awareness of the virus and where what might happen. So I also got an email that night from my next stop. I was supposed to fly to Little Rock, Arkansas and speak to a big insurance conference, because I do corporate speaking and I do sports team speaking. So I was set to go there, and the guy said, hey, I'm going to call you in an hour. We're not sure if we're even going to have this with all that's going on right now. So I said, sure, you do your thing. Well, we ended up canceling it that night, and I flew home the next day. So after about 7 or 10 days of trying to figure out how long is this thing going to go, you could see early on it was going to go a while. So I said, all right, how am I going to make sure that I am not one of those people who fall into what I call the W? The people who are either going to waste this time or are just going to wait until it breaks. And I didn't want to be either one of those. So the first thing I wrote down as I was in my think time, which I do each morning, 2 questions I ask myself every morning. And here they are. Maybe they can do something for you. Question number 1, did I waste yesterday? Did I waste yesterday? And question number 2, how will I feel if I waste today? And those 2 are on this little card. It's a Celtics card from way, way back. I just happen to have a blank one. That was the first one my hand touched when I said I have to write these questions down. So that gives me a framework to start my day. What did I get done? And what would happen if I don't get done what I feel I need to get done today? All right. The second list that's on my desk right here, which you can't see, but I'll go over it with you, is what I call my daily reminders. There are 4 checks that I want to get these words into my head immediately. The first one is appreciation. Making sure that the people who have helped me and even helped me through some of this, the situation right now in terms of still getting speaking engaged, whatever, just let them know you appreciate them. For your players who are home, and you don't walk in their shoes, so you're not sure really what they're truly going through, but have some appreciation that they're trying to get done maybe what you're asking them to do. The second word is thankfulness. Sure, we're in a challenging time, sure, we're in a tough time, but we're in a profession that we love. I mean, you can't be in a better profession than this. So let's be thankful for the job we have and the industry we're in, because this is the industry we have always wanted to be here. The third thing is empathy, right? I often say this, anyone in a leadership position there's 2 pairs of shoes they have to walk in. One is in their closet, and those are the shoes that comfortably fit them. and they can be comfortable the rest of the day. What's that?
Some of you young guys.
Should I keep going, Kat?
Yeah, please do.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought someone asked a question. So with the empathy, 2 pairs of shoes. Number one is the shoes you wear. They're really comfortable, right? They're in your closet. But the other set is those of your players or those that you lead. You know, those shoes may not fit you.
Coach, you muted yourself.
Mistake and press the mute button.
Okay, it must mute every X amount of minutes. So tell me again when that happens, all right? And then the fourth is, did it happen again?
No, you're good, Coach. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey, get me back to the fourth one, Kev. This is a great time to say the following. Look, let's all of us kind of walk our talk. Mm-hmm. In other words, none of us probably were into this Zoom stuff, right? So it is a little uncomfortable for us. And we keep telling our players, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Yet we don't walk that walk. We talk the talk, right? So this is a great lesson for us to be comfortable with this new uncomfortable thing we're in, right? Because here's the deal. The medium has changed, right? We're having to use our computers and the internet and Zoom or WebEx. I've been on some corporate WebExes. The medium has changed, but if our message was good before, our message shouldn't change. It's just how we deliver it. So if you're not quite good on Zoom yet and they can't feel you through the internet, you got to figure out how they can feel you through this internet, right? Through this Zoom call. So empathy. And then the fourth one is others. When we wake up each morning in a leadership position, it is about others first. So I just wanted to throw those four things at you in terms of that. And then the last thing I look at is I have on my desk what I call my controllables commitment list. My controllables commitment list. Because as soon as this thing broke, everyone was talking about we have no control over anything anymore. There's too much unknown, there's too much doubt, there's too much fear. So I said to myself, no, I've got to be able to control something or some things. And as I put more thought to it, I'm going to make sure, again, you can't see it, but it's a list here that I also look at in the morning. Looking at all these lists takes me about 4 minutes. And I just cross-check real quick. There are 3 parts to what I want to control each and every day. Is myself, my day, and my job, my work. I believe I can control all 3 of those, and no one will convince me that I can't. So what do I mean by that? Myself, that's all about me personally. What do I control? And here's a couple of things I wrote down. My attitude, because that's what I bring to each day, is my attitude. My energy, that's what I give to others, right? If I talk in a low, monotone deal here tonight, you're going to be like, this guy doesn't believe in what he's talking about. So the energy that you can bring. And then the third one is effort, right? Because that's what takes me to my best, by putting the effort in. And then I have reactions, choices, and words. And people have asked me, why words? I've never heard that one on things that you can control. Because now more than ever in our leadership positions, our word choice is crucial. And this is where Doc was the best. In times where we were losing or on losing streaks, or when we were in tough situations, or if you guys remember back, we were in the Donald Sterling situation, the Donald Sterling crisis, right? The words he chose were really, really important. And I think we can see it on TV. The words that are being chosen may not have been thought about before they were said. And then in terms of how can I control my day? I have what I call a set of my best buckets. My best buckets. And I don't mean like shooting buckets. I mean, if I can fill these 7 buckets, I'm probably going to be at my best today. And I'm going to give today my best. Here are my 7 buckets, and hopefully you can figure out yours. Bucket number 1 is my family bucket, right? Filling that. Number 2 is my work bucket, whatever I need to do at my desk over here. Number 3 is either my faith or spiritual bucket, right? So I don't often talk about that, but that is a bucket for me. It's always been kind of a silent bucket for me, but I kind of wrote it down and I started talking about this. So I would just tell you, and I'm not here to say to be spiritual, not be spiritual, but it would be awful nice if maybe we said a prayer for somebody we don't even know, right? I mean, that's what this time needs right now. The next bucket is exercise bucket. I know you're looking at me and saying, there's no way you fill that bucket every day, but trust me, I try. The next bucket, the fifth bucket is my think time bucket, where I sit by myself. The only things that are allowed in the room when I'm down with my think time, I allow silence in. Silence can come in. Then it's me, my thoughts, a pad, and a pen. Could be a computer and I'm typing. But that's my think time, my private time to just think about things. And then the last two buckets are my reading bucket and my sleep bucket. So that's in the best buckets. Now, for my work, it's going to be different for me than for you. I'll give you a couple of mine. The number of people I help, right? Because that's part of my job as a speaker. When I go and I speak to teams, both college, professional, both in the sports world and the corporate world, I'm there to try and help in some way. So I can still do that. I just have to do it in a different medium. The communication I have, these Zooms, emails, texts. You guys have probably started to read that there's a number of articles now out there talking about Zoom fatigue. And the one I just read the other day talked about everyone's so Zoom oriented right now, they forgot that you can actually dial a phone number and talk to somebody on a cell. And maybe you get back that and you mix the way you'd send your messages up. The content I create. For you, it's whatever you've had 2 months to think about, what am I going to do different this year? How can I teach this drill better? How can I teach this drill in less words? Because if you work for Doc Rivers, one thing you're going to be told when it's your drill and you're putting it in, the less words, the better. Talking bullet points, not paragraphs. Because the minute that our players' sweat dries, that's it. We've lost them. Okay. And then the fourth thing for me is the preparation I put in. So Kevin asked me to, and occasionally I might take a note myself if I think of something to add. So if you see me looking down, that's why. Kevin asked me to talk about kind of three areas. How I navigated my career. Then the other area was what I learned in the NBA. And then the third area was just a couple of quick hit thoughts on mentoring. So let me start out with kind of my journey. And I didn't purposely do it. Somebody somewhere helped me think of these things. Or I just felt they were the right thing to do. And I'm going to throw out maybe 12 bullets to you. Okay. Bullet number one, it's not only about networking. Because networking to me is just a number. How many people you meet. And you have to be careful because you can get so conscious of networking and trying to force things down people's throat that you know what networking turns into? Not working. So be careful that you're not executing not working and you think you're executing networking. Sure, you have to meet those people, but here's the deal. Shortly after that, you have to start building the relationship. Because if the relationship isn't strong, you may not, if you need that relationship at some point to maybe help you out in your career, why would they? You spent no time nurturing that relationship. Okay? So, I just wanted to kind of hit that real quick. Now with relationships, how do you build them? Because I get asked that all the time. One of my favorite ways to build them is when I'm around a person for the first time or two, I kind of just ask them in passing, as the conversation's going on, a little bit about what they like. Do they like to read? Do they like to read articles? Do they like to read books? Do they like to listen to YouTubes and look at YouTubes for motivation or whatever? And once I get the answers to that, that's a way I can build a relationship without ever talking to them. Because I'll set, like George Raveling, Kevin mentioned George Raveling when he was introducing me. I knew George loved to read, and I also knew he loved to read newspaper articles, books, and blogs and newsletters. So way back, I would send those to him. And all of a sudden, I was a little bit different. Because here's the deal with relationships. Relationships aren't about give and get. The people who live in the world of give and get, they don't get anywhere. It's give, 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 and eventually receive. There's a tremendous difference between the two. I'm giving, but only because I want to get. Those aren't relationships. When you give and you give and you give and you give and you give, it could be an article, could be 3 articles over the next 3 weeks, whatever it is you give. Could be your time, could be making the call that someone asked you to make. Whatever you give, eventually, I believe there are goodness gods up there. It comes back to you. It may take longer. Hey, look, I didn't get into the NBA. I had to ask Wendy this, but maybe not until like 48, 46 years old. So it doesn't just happen. So networking versus not working. I have a life philosophy I want to throw at you. This really helped me navigate my career. And it goes like this. There's more inside each of us. Everyone on this call, no matter how much you have accomplished, there's more inside. And the people who get to where they want to go and become who they've always dreamed of becoming, they're the ones who figure out how do they pull it out. Now, there's what I call mastering the threes. I'm going to give you 2 sets of 3 bullets. This is how I kind of helped myself pull it out of myself. The first is what I call the 3 sets you must master. Those sets are the following: skill set, mindset, and reset. You have to master them as a coach. You have to master them as a leader. Your team needs to master those. Skill set. Hey, whatever you need to be great at your job, that's what you have to master. And my hope is that you have spent these last 2 months that you are better for what your role is on the staff. And you may be even so much better that you're going to get an increased role. That was my hope, that how you spent part of your quarantine, working on your skill set. Mindset is all about how you think, right? Are you a negative person? Are you a doubter? Is the energy you bring going to take the room down? What is your mindset? How do you go into each day? And we might get into that a little bit later. And then reset is all about what we all experience. That's mistakes and failure. And I'll just simply say this. This is what we used to tell our guys with, in the pros. Look, guys, basketball is not a game of perfect, right? Coaching isn't a game of perfect. Teaching isn't a game of perfect. Being a parent's not a game of perfect. Leadership's not a game of perfect. We're going to make mistakes. Guys, just make new ones. Just make new ones, right? Don't repeat the same ones over and over again. We know you're going to make some, but if you make the same one all the time, we can't play you. Now, people will say, well, what if they make what if they lead the NBA in brand new mistakes? We can't play him either. But we had that conversation before the season starts. We talk about that stuff before the season starts. So skill set, mindset, reset. And with the other part of reset is what happens when you fail. I think it's worth talking to your guys about the following things. Guys, how are you going to take it? How are you going to react? Is it going to stop you or start you? I've been around the best of the best, and that's what I wrote my book on. What are their commonalities? One is when failure hits them, it doesn't stop them. As a matter of fact, it starts them. It starts them on a journey to not let that thing happen again. Very, very simple, but not many people do it, and that's why people separate themselves from others. They do the simple things. You know, some people think that, oh, that's too easy. I don't even need to worry about that. Yeah, you need to worry about it as people are passing you as they're climbing the ladder, right? Because some people will stop for 5 minutes. Some players in a game will stop for 7 possessions. I've seen some players in the NBA where a failure has stopped them for 2 or 3 games because they're human beings too, right? So failure, does it stop you or start you? How do you treat it? As devastation or education? How do you treat it? Like, I always kept track of all my failures, and I would review them from time to time throughout the course of the year, right? Because I just wanted to remind myself, okay, I got to watch out for that. Because I wanted to learn from those failures. And that gets me to point number 3. And I had a chance when I spoke to the University of Alabama basketball team. Nick Saban found out I was on campus. He had his secretary call their secretary and ask, would Kevin be free at 11 o'clock this morning? I'd like to spend a half hour with them. So I go over to his office, right? We start talking about, I didn't realize he had read my book and he used it with his messaging to his team. So, but we're talking, and he said something to me that was really powerful, because he was talking about how even he was talking about, he's failed in his career, his players have failed, his teams have failed sometimes. And he said their philosophy at Alabama is never waste a failure. Never waste a failure. And as we talked about it, you know what we decided? Losers waste failures. People who are too cool to admit failures waste failures, right? The know-it-alls in the world, they waste failures. And you know what? They're the easiest people to pass on this climb. And there's two types of people in this world. There's two types of coaches in this world. There's two types of players in this world. There are know-it-alls and there are learn-it-alls. We've just got to make a decision which one we want to be. The second set of three, it's what I call the three-dimensional look at success. I believe the best teams, they master this. And it goes like this. You've got to learn from the past, produce in the present, and prepare for the future. If you can do that, your staff can do that, and your team can do that, you have a shot at reaching your goals, right? You got to learn from the past, not live in the past. Players live in the past. Sometimes they live in the past because they had a great first half, and then they get their butts kicked in the second half because they got cocky. Coaches kind of get full with themselves sometimes. We live in our 6-game winning streak. No, the best of the best, they learn from the past. They don't live in the past. You got to produce in the present. What's that all about? That's the role you've been given. And you have heard this before. I heard it first from Doc about 15, 16 years ago. He was talking to our team about roles, and he said, guys, we just want you to be an all-star at your role. That's all. Because if you're an all-star at your role, even if it is a role that does not score and never gets their name in the paper, you're going to get some accolades. Prime example, DeAndre Jordan. You know what we asked DeAndre to do? Sprint the floor, not run the floor. Because every center in the league can run the floor. DJ is a freak when it comes to speed and athleticism. And if you have a freak and you don't demand freak physical ability out of him, you're hurting him. So we told DJ, don't run the floor, because every center in the league runs the floor. You want to separate yourself? Sprint the floor. Sprint, because they won't be able to keep up with you. So here was his role. Sprint the floor, defensive rebound. We weren't concerned with offensive rebounds. We just didn't want them to get it. And the third thing was get our shooters open. He did that, and you know what happened at the end of that year? First team All-NBA defense, made the NBA All-Star game, and won an Olympic gold medal. And he hardly shot the ball at all. And those of you who have seen DJ play, you don't want him to shoot the ball, right? So produce in the present and then prepare for the future. Let me give you the best definition of preparation I know. And not because it's mine, it's just I believe it's the best one I've heard so far. And if your guys would think this way when they work out, or if they're thinking about working out or not working out, just remind them of the definition of preparation. It goes like this: be there before you get there. That's preparation. Be there before you get there. Remember Ray Allen's shot against San Antonio, right? 5.2 seconds, right corner. He swishes the shot, sends it into overtime. They win. They win Game 7 and win the series. Both players on both teams talked about that was the shot that changed the series. So I used to work out with Ray, myself and Mike Longobardi when he was with the Celtics. Anytime Ray wanted to shoot, we would be there. Didn't matter what time of day. 2 a.m., we were there. 5:30 a.m., we were there. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock, whatever. It doesn't matter. We were there. So as soon as Ray made that shot, I got a bunch of texts from my friends because I wasn't coaching in Miami at the time, right? So Ray was on a different team, and they all said something like this: "Man, he's lucky. He always gets those situations." And I wrote back, "That's not luck. It's called preparation." You see, Ray actually did a drill where he started in the middle of the lane. We would smack the ball. He would speed backpedal outside the three. We would throw him a pass. He'd shoot it. Then he would run back in, not jog like average and below average players. He would sometimes sprint in, start foot firing, smack the ball again. He would speed back pedal to another spot behind the three. we would throw it to him there. You see, Ray had already been there thousands of times before. He even said in post-game interviews, he was there in the pre-game shooting because he did some of those shots before that game. That's why the best are the best, right? And that's one of the things that we have to get across to our players. The best are the best for a reason, and we got to find out what those reasons are. So skill set, mindset, and reset. 3-dimension, learn from the past, produce in the present, prepare for the future. Second thing that I think is important, be intentional. Be intentional about what you do and be intentional about your climb, right? Wherever you want to go in this game or in life, how do you get there? Have an intentional plan to get there. Let me give you my definition of intention or intentional. What you do on purpose to fulfill your purpose. What you do on purpose to fulfill your purpose. If your purpose is to be a great assistant coach, what are you doing today to be a great assistant coach once you're back on the floor with your players? What do you do on purpose? What do you do on purpose for your purpose as a husband, a father, a boyfriend, a girlfriend? What do you do on purpose? Now, your players have to know there's a difference between intentional and intention. Intention is, in my mind, I hope to get to it. Intentional is, front of mind, I will get to it. Big difference. If you guys study Oprah Winfrey at all, you will find out when you watch YouTubes on her talking about this word, she built her empire on that word. Every day was an intentional day for her. She just didn't kind of go in and say, I wonder what I'll do today. Third thing I already talked about. What are you going to be, a know-it-all or a learn-it-all? I decided, well, I didn't decide, it just was me. I was going to be a learn-it-all. Fourth thing that helped navigate my career. I was constantly on a seek and find mission. Seek and find new knowledge, seek and find new relationships, seek and find new ways to teach things, seek and find new terminology. Whatever it is I was seeking and trying to find, I was always on that journey. And many of you on the call today are as well, because I can see some of you like taking notes, right? So, but here's the deal, and here's the difference maker. If you want to be successful, the seek and find is a given. If that's the given, what's the separator? The separator is once you seek and find, then you have to think and apply. Like whatever notes you take today, put thought to them and see which ones apply to you, right? Don't just all of a sudden put them in your file and say, oh, yeah, I got a file on Kevin Eastman. Who cares what the file is if you don't apply it? Because everyone talks about knowledge is power. And I've been saying this for, 35 years now. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is knowledge until you apply it, right? It's the application that turns it into power, because here's the deal. Some people live in the world of knowledge acquisition. Others live in the second world and the additional world of knowledge application. You got to do both if you want to get to where you want to go, right? Because we know that success leaves footprints, and there's 3 F's that go with those footprints. And I lived these as I was growing up in the game, right? Because I knew that success left footprints. I wanted to find them, follow them, and fit them. So so you found this guy called Kevin Eastman tonight. Now, maybe you like some of the things I talk about. Maybe you go on my website, or you buy the book and you find out more, right? So that's called the following stage. And then one of the most important parts is the fit, because not everything I say, not everything you read, not everything you hear will fit you, right? So, so next point. I think I did this really well, and it really helped me. I went through my career with big eyes, big ears, and a small mouth. I was constantly watching the best of the best. As coaches, when I was out scouting, I wanted to see who got there first. I'll never forget when I first became a head coach at Washington State, Lute Olson, all-time great coach. Maybe some of the young guys don't know his name. Really great coach at the University of Iowa, well, Long Beach State, University of Iowa, and then Arizona. Final Fours, you name it. And he was the first one in the gym. He beat me in the gym as a head coach. And this might have been year 35. The best are the best for a reason. But I wanted to see those reasons. I just didn't want to think about them and read about them. I wanted to see them. So I had big eyes. I had big ears. Whenever I could listen and learn, I tried to do that. If I could get around people for a cup of coffee, listen and learn. Because when I was talking, I was only regurgitating what I already know. And I always say this, I already know what I know. And if all I know is what I know, I need to know what you know. So tell me it, right? I already know what I know. And if all I know is what I know, I don't know enough. I don't know enough to get to where I want to go. Big eyes, big ears, and a small mouth. Why? Because when you talk, it's just stuff you already know. Number 6, Kevin spoke about early on. Never pass up a basketball opportunity. If someone presents a basketball opportunity, it could be working at camp, it could be speaking at a camp. You never know who's there, right? I would not have had it. Hold on here.
Think y'all
I
feel
would not have
think we
been. I
feel
would
the
not
energy,
have
right?
been able to what? I would
Coach,
not have been able to win this championship ring with the Boston Celtics. You can probably see it here. Okay, I've never worn it. The only one who's worn it in my family is my son, because he was having a hard time getting a date to the prom. Let me tell you something. You put that sucker on, you're getting a date. Okay. Now I don't know if the young lady could see or anything, but she knew that ring was on his finger. He got a date. Actually, he got 2 girls ask him out. Okay. And then they found out. Well, I'm stopping there because Wendy will kill me if she is. This being filmed? Because if it is, I want to. Oh, it is. Okay, then let me start over. I love Wendy to death. She's my best friend. I can't wait to see her later on tonight. I am in real trouble right now because Kevin Sutton is the first thing he's doing is sending this to Wendy. So, but anyway, I wouldn't have won that ring if I wouldn't have said yes when I was driving down the interstate. I got a call from a guy by the name of Glenn Wilkes, and he said, "Hey, we got a clinic this weekend, and one of our speakers canceled. Would you like to do it?" So, that's a backhanded compliment, right? We really don't want you, but we're stuck. The 7 other guys we called, they said no, right? So I said, "Sure, I'll do it." I said, I'll get home and I'll look at some flights. He said, "No, we already got one set up for 6 o'clock tonight." I said, "How did you know that?" He said, "Kevin, I know you never say no." So I go down there, I give my talk on skill development, sweating, spitting, all that stuff I did, right? Really involved in the drill, engaged, grabbing guys, pulling guys, knocking guys. Well, I didn't know in the stands was a guy by the name of George Raveling. George and Glenn Wilkes were good friends. George says to Glenn, "We have to get Kevin to work the Nike All-American camp." I didn't even know what that was. So I said, yeah to that. So I go there. Long story short, Nike hires me eventually to work out all their best players around the country. Well, I have to go down to Florida one time and work out this team. And I never work out teams. Nike never does that. So I go down there to Florida. Keith Brumbaugh, if you remember that name, he was on the team. But so was this other kid, right? It was Doc Rivers' son, right? He was on the team. So I'm working them out. I don't know this. I don't even know because I don't ask the kids there. I just knew it was Keith Brumbaugh, the highly rated guy. Well, apparently, which one would that have been? Oster Spencer?
No, it would have been
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah
Yeah.
River.
Jeremiah goes home and tells Doc Rivers, his father, "Man, Dad, this guy today, man, he was good. He was in the drills. He was pushing us, grabbing us. He really knew the game. He had some great teaching points. As a matter of fact, let me tell you a couple." Well, again, unbeknownst to me, Doc was in talks with 3 NBA teams, and he eventually wanted to hire a skill development guy. Well, long story short, he asked me to interview with him in his house. I go interview in the house. I get the job. Had I said no on that interstate in Richmond, Virginia, I would never have seen one of these things, right? A world championship ring. So my point is never pass up a basketball opportunity. Number 7, this was a challenge in every room I walked into or any clinic that I was at. And I'm going to ask you one other time. Kev, you still hear me?
Yes, Coach, I can.
Okay, because I'm about ready to fall asleep. Hey, man, for guys my age, you can't do a 7:30 clinic. Come on. All right. So every room that I went into, I challenged myself. I wanted to win the challenge of the room. And here were the challenges I put before me. Challenge number 1, be the most prepared person walking into that room. If I knew who was speaking, I had some questions ready in case they opened it up for Q&A. And I knew about that person. Whether she was a great coach or he was a great coach, I knew, right? The second challenge I put, be the best note taker in the room. Be the best note taker in the room. Third one, be the best question asker to walk into that room. And the last one is be the most respectful person in that room. Excuse me, that's the fifth one. The fourth one is be the best listener in that room. The eighth bullet, or whatever bullet we're on, always have a pen and a notepad. Because you know why? You might get in a situation like I was in with the Boston Celtics. Now, I was able to get out of this situation, but you know what I say? Sometimes you have the title of basketball coach and you never coach basketball. Because in practice, your head coach does all the teaching and puts in all the drills, and you hardly do any coaching in practice, right? You can still coach. That was me in Boston because Doc spoke the most. Then our defensive coordinator spoke second most. The year we wanted it was Tom Thibodeau. And by that time, it was about 95% of the practice, right? So I did my coaching when the guys got taken out of a drill to either reinforce what Doc was talking about or Tibbs was talking about, right? So that was my role on the staff. And then my role really took hold after practice was over. And I wrote up every note I took during practice and handed it to Doc so that he could maybe forgot something, didn't see something, observations about practice, things I heard, things I saw, a different way we could teach a drill, better word efficiency, whatever it was, okay? So always have a pen and a notepad, because if you ever have a chance to coach with Doc Rivers, first thing I would say is do it. Second thing I would say, bring a notepad every day to practice. He will throw out 3 wisdom bombs minimum per practice.
What's good?
All right. Next bullet point. Be better than most at something in the game. That's how that's how I advanced. I became, I guess, pretty good at skill development and working players out. So that was my niche. And I knew I was better at that part of the game than many, many people because I spent so much time studying it, working on it, crafting my how I was going to teach, the words I was going to use. So whatever that is for you, find something where you're better than most in the game, because that's how you can get noticed. The next one is I was always kind of concerned about this. What's my reputation out there? Like, what is it? And as I thought more about it as a younger coach, I could have one of 3 reputations: a good reputation, a bad reputation, or no reputation. Numbers 2 and 3 don't help you move up. Good reputation. I was around basketball a lot. If there was a clinic, I was there. If there was coaches getting together, I was there if I got invited, right? I always tried to stay in shape and kind of look like a coach. Not that that's super, you have to do that. But I felt for me, I had to do that, right? So I was always courteous whenever I met someone, right? I treated the elder coaches with a great deal of respect, which I would have anyway. It wasn't a ploy. It wasn't a guise. Okay. So those were the things I'm talking about. You have to develop that good reputation, but you're going to have one of those 3 reputations, and 2 of them are not real good. And then the last thing I'll throw out about navigating my career was probably 6, 7, 8 years in, possibly even more than that. I started to figure out that a way I could separate myself was through this word, depth, D-E-P-T-H. The depth of my thinking about the game, the depth of the relationships that I have formed, the depth of the knowledge that I have, the depth of the questions that I ask. And I will say this to you. I have had head coaches in the college and the NBA say to me, God, you ask the best questions. You've asked me some things that no one's ever asked me before, nor have they asked me in that way, right? So you never know what's going to catch with someone who's looking. But I decided I was not going to prostitute myself. I was just going to be me and try and be really, really good at me. And I guess the word's authentic nowadays. So I didn't want to fake it. If I wasn't good with how I was, then, that's the hand I was dealt. So that's navigation of the career. Let me jump a little bit into what was the second one here? What I learned in the NBA, okay? Because I kept my notes on what he asked. Let me give you just maybe 3 or 4 things. The first thing I guess I would say to you is the power of relationship building, right? Like you, at that level, when you're coaching, I think when you're coaching anybody, but certainly when you're coaching the best, you have to have a relationship with that player to get them to do what you want them to do, to be able to drive them as hard as you may have to drive them sometimes, right? You know, I say this in almost every clinic when I talk to coaches. Inevitably, I get asked the question, well, we have this really good player, but we kind of like, we don't know what makes them tick. And I always say, well, respectfully, you know, I don't think the best coaches are worried about what makes their players tick. We weren't. That was third on our list. How they ticked was third in importance on our list. Let me tell you 1 and 2. Number 1, we didn't care what made them tick. We cared what made them talk. Because if we could get them to talk, we had a shot, and we thought a better shot at figuring out what really made them tick. And we didn't care what made them tick. Number 2, we cared about what made them listen. Because if we could get them to listen, we have a shot at changing the way they tick. So how do you get them to talk? How do you get them to listen? Building relationships, spending time, showing them that you care about them. That doesn't mean you have your arm around them and you're walking with them and hugging them once an hour all day long. It just means that they know deep in your heart you do care. However you do that, I would suggest you do that. And don't underestimate the power of relationships in becoming a successful coach. What would I want to throw at you as number 2? How about the importance of truth? I found up there, you don't mess around. Those guys, they just want to know the truth. And the truth needs 3 things, just so those of you who haven't heard me speak before. I think this is really important. Your teams need to exemplify these 3 things. Us as coaches need to do it. Leaders in the corporate world need to do this. This has to be present if we want to have a chance at a championship or be the best that we can be. Here are the 3 things that truth needs. Number 1, you got to be able to live it. Number 2, you got to be able to tell it. And number 3, you got to be able to take it. Live it, tell it, take it. Real quick, what does live it mean? Do your actions match your words? You want to get buy-in from your players? Trust me. They're paying attention. You're telling us to do this, coach. Like you're telling us to work hard. You leave the office at 2:00 every day. Or you sprint out of practice every day. But you want us to work hard? One of the most important things we can do in a leadership position is be the example. Be who you want them to be. That's what the best leaders in the corporate world do. That's what the best leaders I've ever been around, right? The Doc Rivers, the Eric Spoelstras, the Dwayne Caseys, the Steve Kerrs. I don't know Pop really well at all, but Doc tells me stories. He's the same way. Be who you want them to be, right? So you got to be able to live it. You got to be able to tell it. Hey, like, you know, you guys know JJ Redick probably. You could cuss him up and down if you wanted to for 10 minutes, and he would walk away from you and say, I got you, coach, and just walk away. Didn't affect him. You do that to maybe another player, maybe a 7-footer, he becomes 5'5". So relationships and communication are about 2 things, who and how. And trust me, we spend time as a staff trying to think about, okay, with our players this year, how do we address them? Now, is there some times where you're going to blast a player no matter what? Probably. But what I found out in the NBA, there's so much more positivity in the NBA than negativity. I thought, like, when Doc yelled sometimes in practice, after practice, he might say to me, man, I got on him too hard. And I'm thinking, you have never been to a college practice. That's nothing, right? So I learned that you can actually win an NBA World Championship by being predominantly, overwhelmingly positive. But that doesn't mean you don't blast them sometimes. He did that. You know, I heard it from Tony Dungy first. Most of you have probably heard this, if not all of you, but just in case there's a couple that haven't. You can actually, Doc proved to me that you can be very, very, very demanding and not be demeaning all the time. You don't have to take guys down all the time. You can win a world championship and be demanding but not demeaning. And then you've got to be able to take it. I'm just going to say this about that. I think we've been lied to. They say the truth hurts. No, the truth helps. The truth helps. It may embarrass you and turn your ears red, but if you really think about it, the truth helps. The third thing I'm going to throw at you, I learned that you have to find a way to get buy-in. You have to get buy-in when you're working with the best in the NBA. And there are 4 ways you can get buy-in, we think. Number 1 is your competence. You got to know your stuff. If you say something to an NBA player and it doesn't work a couple of times, they may not talk to you for 2 months. They don't have time for that. In Boston, we're trying to win a world championship. We got to listen to Kevin Eastman. He don't know what he's talking about. He's got no competence. They'll be nice to you, but they are not going to ask you anything. They may not talk to you unless they have to or you say hi. That's just the way it is, right? So you got to work on your knowledge acquisition and then your knowledge application like we talked about earlier. Second thing is trustworthiness. Can I trust you? Trust gets buy-in, right? So if I'm going to buy into you, I got to first trust you, right? If I'm going to buy into you, I got to first trust you. I'm not going to buy into anybody I don't trust. The third thing is work ethic. It's a common theme because in athletics, coaches always ask their players to work hard. You want them to buy into you, they got to see you they got to see you working, right? And then the last thing is sincerity. Who are you in this for? Who are you in this for? Are you in it for you, coach, so you can climb the ladder, or are you in it for us? Like up at that level, if they know that you're in it for yourself, done. They won't listen to you. And then the last thing I'll say about the NBA, I learned the importance of 2 critical words to success: next and every. We've all heard getting on to the next play. But if you want to be the best of the best, it's also about next level focus, next level study, next level scouting reports I have to learn, right? Next level knowledge. All those things that go with the word next. Okay, and you can come up with your list. And then why is every so important? Because I learned this when you're going after a championship. I told this story in an earlier Zoom today. So when we won the title in 2008, after the champagne deal in the locker room, the coaches and their wives got together in the coaches' locker room. We were just talking about the year and reminiscing, but we started to talk about that finals series against the Lakers, and we won in 6 games. And game 6, we kind of at one point just blew them out. And there was a couple of key plays. One was where one of our players dove on the floor, and we were saying, hey, how about when he dove on the floor? That just turned the game, man. And then how about that early third quarter sideline out play? We weren't going to run it, but then we remembered that it worked in the first quarter, so let's go ahead and run it. And then Ray hits a 3. That was our talk after that game. Now, fly with me, if you will, to Los Angeles, California 2 years later. Staples Center Arena, 2010, June 2010, Lakers Celtics. We lose in 7 games. Here was our talk after that game. Because Kendrick Perkins, our starting center, went down. So the person who had it, I'm not going to say names and all, but we put our second string center in to start. Then our third string center had to become the second string center. And if your third string center has to play some important minutes in a final series, your chances go down. Trust me on that one. Well, our second string center cramped up. So we lose that game and they win the title. In the locker room after that game, our talk was like this. Gosh, we should have run this baseline out of bounds play on that one thing because we had the matchup with Paul, right? We should have worked this, let's say his name was John. We should have worked John harder in March and April because then maybe he would have been in better shape and he wouldn't have cramped up because he cramped up and we had to take him out. And now our third string center had to play more minutes than a third string center should play. You can see the difference in the talk, right? Here's my point. When we lost, what did we do? We talked about March and what we did there. We talked about April and what we didn't do there. April, what we didn't do there. The play we didn't run. You see, every day counts when it gets to the last day. I'm going to say that again because that's crucial to coaching. Every day counts when it's the last day. We lost in Game 7 in LA. It was the last day of our season. That's when we started to evaluate every day prior to that. Now they count it. Every day should count every day you're in it. every day should count. Every day you're practicing. Don't let them waste any every day. And that's a story I'll tell for the rest of my life because it was so important. And then I guess I'll throw one more thing that I learned in the NBA. In college, I don't know if I always liked expectations on my program. I was thinking, okay, gosh, now I got, the pressure. I learned from Doc, you want expectations. That means, number one, your fans care. Number two, people think you have a chance to be in the fight for a championship, right? Or to be have a successful season. We went from 24-58 in 2007 to 66-16 in an NBA title in 2008. In 2007, Doc was getting booed. In 2007, I remember walking down the hallway with him, the back hallway as we were going to our locker room. And he turned to me, and he's Doc Rivers, and I'm Kevin Eastman. And if you don't know what that means this is like Doc Rivers, this is Kevin Eastman, right? So he turns to me, and he says, I don't know what else I can do. And I'm thinking to myself, what? This guy, he knows all he knows about the game, one of the best coaches in the game, and even he's down, right? But then as we got further down, he turns to me and he said, you know what? I said to him, I said, you just got to pump them back up, Doc. That's all. You just got to get them back ready. That's what you're good at. You are good at providing hope for our team. We need some tonight, right? And then the next day he said, you know what? Because I said to him the next day, man, I can't believe they booed you like that. I felt like turning around and shouting at the fans. And he said, no, Kevin, you want boos because that means they care. And when they care, there are expectations. And when there are expectations, that means they think you got a shot to be really good. So I would say don't shy away from expectations. They can be good too. So Kev, I might stop there because I've been talking too long. And then I can talk about mentoring, but if you want to just open it up to questions, I can do that too.
Well, first and foremost, you haven't been talking too long. I've been watching everybody, and people have been taking great notes. But we can open it up right now because a lot of people do have.
Hey,
questions.
this is not liquor, by the way. Just so you know, I'm not like what's that guy? Blake Shelton on The Voice.
Yeah,
right?
on The Voice.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll open it up now, and then the first question is from John Thompson from the North Carolina Wesleyan University.
Yeah. Hey, John. Go.
Go ahead,
Coach, how are you?
Doing great.
Good. Coach, I appreciate your time. I've got two questions. So you can take them however, I'll give them both to you and take them however you want them. The first one is when you talk about what makes the best, coaches' communication. A lot of us may have similar messages in terms of what we're teaching.
Okay. We might have lost him.
Then secondly, would like to ask about teaching decision-making and any particular points that you try to utilize in teaching player decision-making.
Yeah. First off, I'm jotting some notes as you're talking, so that's why I'm looking down. In terms of communication, obviously critical, we all know that. It gets back to kind of that thing I said in relationship building. What was important to us was who and how. Who am I talking to? How do I send that message? And the only way we could have a shot at being correct about that is if we really tried early on when there was no pressure involved, like before the season, when there's no emotion, nobody's a starter yet, nobody's stats have been kept just yet. Everything's nice and comfortable before the season. That's when we really want to get to know our guys and reconnect, because in the NBA, sometimes you actually leave each other for, all 3 months. Well, if you're winning a title for about a month and a half, you're gone. But so that was really important. That we didn't make it real complicated. Now, the how part could change. I always did this. I always asked players, other than your family, who in the world or in sports do you respect the most? And usually they would say, they might say, like, I'm not going to say which player, but there was one player on the Celtics who really respected Tom Brady. He respected him for his leadership ability. And this player wanted to become a leader. So, but the players weren't going to accept him being a leader because he didn't do leader type things. So as soon as I heard he really respected Tom Brady, I thought, boom, that's it. I read every article I could and kept reading them all year. And whenever I saw an article that dealt with Tom saying something about leadership, I would make a copy of it. I would highlight the parts that Tom talked about. If we were at home in Boston, I would fold it up, put it in an envelope, put it in that player's locker room. If we were on the road, I used to get up around, pretty early, it doesn't matter what time, and I would slip that envelope underneath his door. And at some point, I guarantee you, because I would write a note on it, hey, I thought this was a pretty good leadership thing Tom Brady said, Coach E. So he knew it was from me. At some point, that every player I've done this with has asked, why did you send me that one? Why did you give me that article? Boom, there it is. I'm good now. I am good. He just opened the front door. He unlocked it first. He opened the front door and said, hey, Kevin, come on in. Talk to me about why you gave me this article, right? So that helped the communication because we wanted to communicate with them off the floor too. We thought that would enhance the communication on the floor. So John, because you went out, we couldn't hear some of that question. I assume that it was coach to player. If it were player to player, we simply said this to our players. Look, if you want to be listened to, you have to listen first. You can't be a one-way communicator where you only are worried about people listening to what you have to say. Communication only works if you're willing to listen to your teammate talk as well. And we weren't shy about it. We would talk to our guys about stuff like that. If someone really was poor in communication in practice or game, Doc might bring it up the next day. Right? So that was the part on communication. Decision making, there's so many reasons for bad decisions. Some of it is hesitation, which leads to a split-second delay, which may lead to a pass being stolen or deflected, right? And that may be because the player's not comfortable in that position, so we might work on that. And that may, in fact, help his confidence, get him into that situation more. And now the floor is a little more open to make the same pass, but it's open now. Another thing we talk about when decisions are bad is knowledge of the game. So if the decisions are more because he just doesn't know the game well enough, that's part of our fault too. Let's just talk to him about the game, right? Let's just watch film with them. I might say to a player, hey, come on up. I want to show you a film from the old days because you always say Jerry West isn't any good. Let me show you some Jerry West film. And at the end of it, if you say he's not good, I got dinner. You can't say Jerry West is because every edit you have, it goes in. Right? So they can't say that. But that's not the reason I bring him up there. I get him into conversations about, you saw the shot, but look how he got into that crease. Instead of driving across the floor, he went to the rim, right? Or look how he got open. Hey, like JJ, that's a move you should put into yours. It's going to make you a better player. So whatever it is in the decisions, we might do that. So it becomes about maybe I have to put him into a drill where he can read situations better. We concocted drills like that too, where we may have a point guard just fly into the, speed dribble into the lane, and then 1, 2, or 3 defenders would, close in on him, and he's got to make the right pass, right? So those are just some of the things we did. But you know what? You just keep trying stuff until it works. I don't think an assistant coach in particular should ever give up on a player. That's the head coach's decision. Now, you may find out he is no longer listening to me. So, hey, Tibbs, can you take him? He's not listening to me anymore. He's just not. So, or Longo, can you take him? Lawrence Frank. Lawrence, can you take him out? He's just not listening to me anymore. How about another one?
Yeah, next question. Lamont Franklin, University of Miami.
Who is he? He's the guy that drove me out of coaching.
Not at all, Coach. I sent you on your way.
I would still
Washington
be coaching
State.
if
I'm
I
the
didn't
reason
enjoy
you're
it.
at Washington State. That was
Oh
all
yeah,
me.
that's right. That's right.
Coach, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thank you for your time. You know, just thinking back, you mentioned a couple of things. You talked about mastering the threes, you know, and being better at building your skill set, building your mindset, and then also the reset. And then you went on a little bit to talk about being better at something in the game, right? And as you look back on your career and how you navigated through each phase, whether it was at Belmont Abbey or UNC Wilmington or in the Washington State, can you talk a little bit about your time that you spent as an AD and how that kind of helped you to pull everything together and keep pressing forward and then going into the Nike Skills Academy and then on to the Celtics and so forth. But just talk a little bit about that time period of being an athletic director and maybe how that helped you as well.
Yeah, well, I guess, you know, that opportunity almost fell to me. I didn't go after that opportunity. I was having I was in a nice rhythm to my life with some of the camps I was running. This is after I left Washington State, doing some stuff like that. And then it just presented itself. And I thought, you know what, I might be able to help coaches. And the basketball coach at the time was Mike Rhodes. Really good coach. He's at VCU now. Well, you know. So he told me about the job and he thought it would be good and I'd be a good fit and that I'd be good for the department. So I did it. So, you know, I also every now and then like to get in those positions where I know where I'm a rookie again. Right. So I was a rookie again. That was fun trying to learn that job. But I got an appreciation for what the coaches go through in all different sports. And in particular with Mike Rhodes, you know, I learned from him. I learned how he continued to work on his craft, and he would come in and we'd talk basketball, and I would say, no, I never really thought of it that way, right? So for me, it was more about leadership. It helped me see what other coaches go through. There weren't any miraculous like aha moments in that position, and the whole time I was still thinking the game, right? And then I could watch the men's team play, the women's teams play. We had a women's coach there. She just retired recently, Carol LaHaye. She was good, man. I used to love watching her practices and her games. So I guess I learned a little bit more basketball there. I also learned from Mike that you know, I saw him firsthand. He can be demeaning or demanding and not really be demeaning. He was able to figure out how to push guys and then know when to put the brakes on. And that's a special skill. So I would say those things probably come to mind with the athletic director position. I don't know if it's a job that I would sprint to today, but it certainly helped. And it helped me form some of my leadership philosophies.
Next question, Coach Adair, the queen of the Zoom.
Hey, Kevin, thank you so much.
Yes.
I want you to know that we did use your book this season, and I actually go through the power words daily. And in looking at your power words, I just want to know, were you intentional in starting with the word truth and then finishing with the word talent? And the reason why I asked that, we kind of picked a word every day, and it led us up to the first day of official practice. And I didn't look ahead. So when I was going through each word, I was taking a bath when I got to that final word, and it was talent. So we went through all the other power words and all the other characteristics that you listed, and the final word of 25 was talent. Was that intentionally written that way? I'm just curious.
That's crazy. No one's asked that full question ever. They always ask, is there an order to it? And as a matter of fact, my editor, he said, now we got to get them in order of importance. I said, I can't do that. He said, no, we got to do that. I said, excuse me. I think I came up with these ideas and I'm writing it. So I need to tell you, I don't have an order except for the first and the last word.
Wow.
Those are the only ones that I want to put in a certain order. And the reason truth is so important, how can you get to where you want to go if you don't know the truth? And
Right.
the one thing we have to talk to players about is when they hear the word truth, they think negativity.
Right.
No, truth can be very positive too. You know, Pat Riley used to say this all the time. Catch him doing something right. That's the sign of a good coach too, right? And Pat drove those guys, but he would catch them doing something right. Doc catches guys doing something right a lot. Okay. So truth was important because I thought that was the foundation of any success you would want to have. Right. And then the reason I put talent is because most people think talent alone can get them anywhere they want to go. And I'm here to tell you, after being in the NBA, the 30th team in the NBA,
Right.
those guys have talent. They do. But here's the difference, and some of you have heard me say this. Like the championship teams and the teams who are good in the NBA, they do not want players with talent. They do not want players with talent because players with talent lose. What they do want is talented players.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference in those two words, and that's what it gets into the book,
Right.
is the spelling. Talented, the group that every championship coach wants, it has an E and a D at the end of it. And for us, that stood for extra dimension. That's the separator. You have talent, and then you have to have an extra dimension to be able to be the best at the end of the year or be in the hunt to be the best. And what are the extra dimensions? You know, it could be a Patrick Mahomes, right? The Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid, their coach, used to say he is so resilient. For a young guy, he just, the interception rubs off. He'll study it tomorrow, but I got to come back and fire a bullet and a dime on my next drive, right? You got Tom Brady, right? His extra dimension is the detail, you know, or a Peyton Manning in football, let's say. Gosh, I'm in the football mode now. But he spoke to the Clippers just the other day, a Zoom call. And one of the Clipper players asked Peyton, if you were still playing in the NFL, what would you be doing right now during this quarantine time? And he said, that'd be easy. First thing I'd do, because they asked him, what's the first thing you do? He said, that'd be easy. The first thing I'd do would be take all of my interceptions over the last 5 years and study them. Why? Because this gets back to what I said earlier. He knows how important failure is. He is going to treat it as education, not devastation. He's going to study them. He will chart out how many were his fault. How many did he throw 1 second after the receiver broke, right? So, so those are the things I mean by extra dimension, the ED, and that's why I put those words where they are. But you know, what's interesting is if any of you decide to write a book, I'm going to tell you one thing that you have no clue about: who reads it. You had just mentioned your team read it. I had no idea. I had no idea who read it. You know, I talked about Coach Saban, right? So I'm doing the same thing down in Clemson. I speak to Brad Brunell's team first, and then the next day I spoke to Amanda's team, Amanda Butler, the women's coach. Well, on the trip, for some reason, I must get these half-hour meeting calls. So I end up spending a half hour with Dabo. And he sits there and he says, you know, you don't know this, but I bought your book. And I was like, you know, what am I supposed to say that? Great. But I noticed you got a discount, and I also noticed you make $10 million a year. So I'd like to get the full price for that book. No, I didn't say that. So then he said, you know how we use it? I said, no, I have no idea. He said, well, we have 12 games each year. And on Friday nights before our Saturday games, it's just me and the team, either in the hotel ballroom. Yeah, in the hotel ballroom, because they stay in a hotel and home games too. It's just my time with the team. Nobody else is in there. No assistant coaches, no trainers, no nothing. Just himself and the 100 players or however many. And he said, after I read your book, we decided to take 2 words a weekend. And we just talked about those words and why those words would be important tomorrow. And I'm not telling you this to get you to buy the book. What I'm saying it for is the best of the best, they're always trying to find ways to meet their teams, to talk to their teams, to get their teams thinking. And I have been shocked by how many teams have used it at all levels, from the pros to high school. So I'm very humbled by that. And what I've also found out through this coronavirus situation is coaches are still on the hunt for content because these Zoom calls with just them and the staff and the players, they're getting old. And so guys are trying to be creative. Now, you know, the Clippers can leverage their, like you guys, sorry about this, but your speaker sucks. Let me tell you who the Clippers got. Peyton Manning, Mike Tyson, Michael Phelps, Chris Rock, and you get Kevin Eastman. Something wrong with this call, man.
All right, next question. Manny Bloom.
Coach, how you doing?
Good.
Good. I caught you earlier in the 5-star clinic too, and I was thinking about two words that you've been using. The first one dealing with coaches, when you said relationships. How hard have you found it in your career? Obviously, I have a ton of relationships with coaches, just like you do, to make it not where it's just a basketball relationship. You know, we all coach basketball, and we end up having such a bond with basketball. But getting a relationship outside of basketball, other items. I know you said you ask questions when you first meet somebody. Any other tidbits with that?
Well, you know, I do that thing where I try and whatever is important to them, I try and provide that for them without asking for any reply at all. I do a lot of coffee meetings if I can, and I'm good with someone saying no. The other thing I do sometimes is I'll say, let's say I'm calling, I don't know, let's say, well, I know him, but let's say I'm calling Eric Spoelstra and I haven't talked to him in a while, right? So I text him and I say, hey, Eric, I'm going to be in Miami. If you got 20 minutes, I'd love to catch you for a quick cup of coffee. But please know this, if you say yes, I'm going to put my watch on the table. And at 20 minutes, I'm standing up and walking out because I respect your time. I very seldom get turned down in those situations. And if I do, it's nothing on me. They just didn't want to do it. So I don't force relationships. That's why I say it's all about give, 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 give. And if it's supposed to be returned, it will. That's just kind of how I've operated. And it's worked for me, but that doesn't mean I always get a request for 20 minutes. I don't. So, but I get it. And there's some requests I personally have to turn down sometimes. It just doesn't fit. So, but I'm not going to be a jerk or stop the relationship because of that.
And then my second question more dealt with players. Will you say the word reset? And as a coach over 20 years, I found from my first 5 years, I'm much better at resetting than I ever was as a young coach. But the players don't get older, right? The players, if you coach high school, they're high school always. So, you know, what is the thin line between being able to reset, like I can reset after a game and learn from it and let's move on, and the players maybe not thinking that you care about the loss and we're just letting it go, but we're still trying to learn from it. Any tidbits there?
Yeah, I would be very frank with them. What I've learned in coaching is this: if I live in the past, then I don't give you my best in the present. Now, what I did last night, guys, is something you guys didn't do. I watched that film 3 times, right? And I saw some things I didn't do well enough for you guys, and I saw things you didn't do well enough for each other. So we both have an accountability here, right? But here's the deal. If we keep living in yesterday, I don't think we give our best today. Now, and I would even go this far, like depending on your language, like guys, I was pissed yesterday, but here's what I never want to do as a coach. I never want to say something right after the game that I have to apologize for tomorrow. That's what Doc used to always say. Let me just say something here, by the way. The average length of time of a Doc Rivers post-game talk might be 47 seconds. Usually it's, hey guys, we weren't very good. Okay, we got a plane leaves at 10:15. Let's get on that. Let's get to the next city and let's prepare starting tomorrow. Let's go, bring it in. Right? Or he may spend 3 minutes one game. Hey, look, that's not Clipper basketball. That's not Boston Celtic basketball. Kevin Garnett. Kevin, is that Celtic basketball? No, man, that ain't. Right? So here's the deal, guys. I had a part in this loss, and each of you know deep down in your heart, you each had a part in this loss. We can't do this anymore. All right, let's get on the plane. Boom. So he doesn't, he taught me that the good coaches never have to apologize the next day. Right?
Coach.
So that would be one. And what I learned in the NBA is there's another game. See, there's not as many other games for you guys. Like Doc said, you can't. We have a game tomorrow night in a city that's 1,200 miles from here. So we gotta learn from it and move on. So, but so much of all this stuff about how do you refocus a guy? How do you talk to a guy? It's all that who and how. Like, how can I send that message? And there are some players where it takes me a while to figure out how to send that message to them. And some of them don't work. And if I really screw up, I'll come back the next day and say, you know something? What I said yesterday, that was dumb. Like, I didn't think enough. And usually they'll say, what do you mean, coach? No, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, it was. Here's why. No, it's not that bad. And then that usually led to something else because it broke the wall. So I'm just on a constant search because I know this. In leadership and coaching, at some point, we have to get a piece of their mind. Like, we got to get in there somehow. And what I learned through Doc is the best way to get to the mind is through the heart, right? Like, if you can develop that relationship and they know that you care about them, like, the NBA, the unwritten rule in the NBA is the stronger the relationship, well, the more MFs you can throw at a player. Right? The stronger the relationship, the harder you can get on a guy. Just think of Popovich. Just think of Pop and Tim Duncan. Tim's one of the best players ever to play. If you really saw some of those huddles, oh my word, some of those words will never be said in church. Right? And they're said with some venom, but loving venom. But so Tim would say, I got you, Pop. I got you. But, they spend time. They go out to dinners on the road. You guys have read about them. So that's just a couple of things.
Thank you.
Hey, next question, Mike Lopez.
Coach, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on my podcast as well every time I've asked.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate it, man. You've been great. My question is about comparison. That saying that goes, comparison is a thief of joy. Is there ever a time and a capacity where we can interject comparison, whether with players or coaching staffs?
Yeah, I think it gets back to who. Like, I never forget, we know how competitive, or we, meaning us back with the Clippers. And Chris Paul really has a drive to be good, right? He really has a drive to be good. He works really, really hard. And we wanted to try and see if we could get him like to another level. So we created this booklet called They Say. It's called They Say, right? And it would be They Say, and then page 1 might be They Say Tony Parker's better than Chris Paul. Boom. We would have in finding open players. Then we would have the top 5 assist leaders in the NBA from last year. Maybe Chris was second. Maybe Tony was first, right? Then we would do, they say that whomever, Avery Bradley was known as a great defensive player in his Boston years, right? They say Avery Bradley is a better defensive player on the ball than Chris Paul. And sometimes in some pages you put it like an emoji with like this, just to kind of like get the fire struck. So we used comparison there, but we knew who it was. With some others, maybe not. I know we're never supposed to fall victim of comparison, but as much as I try and stay away from it, sometimes I say, well, gosh, that guy's getting, a speaking engagement at that Fortune 100 company. Why am I not getting that? And then I just think back, hey, look, he got it. More power to that guy. More power to that lady. Because you know what? She's a good speaker too. And you know what else? I might not be as good as her. So up your game. Up your game. The guy who sits in this desk right there. Up your game. So I don't think comparison's a bad thing. I just think it has to be used with the right people. And I also think that comparing yourself sometimes and coming away from that comparison saying, I'm not good enough. I mean, I get those still. Like when I first got to the NBA, oh man, you talk about fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
Like if I didn't know the answer to something, the player said, "What would you do here?" No. Doc's stop practice enough. We're not stopping practice for that. You know exactly what you should do. I didn't know, right? But he didn't know I didn't know, right? So I didn't lie to him.
Yeah.
I just wasn't prepared to give him as detailed an answer right there. Now, next day in practice, I would have thought about it maybe. Now, that happened maybe once in 10,000 times. But next day I said, you know why? Hey, Ray, you know why I didn't say anything? Because I really thought practice was being stopped too much. But if I had had 3 minutes, here's what I would have said to you. And man, I come with all this wisdom on the next day, right?
Yeah.
So comparison isn't horrible. I don't think it's horrible.
Appreciate
Just be
that.
careful of who.
Definitely.
Next question, Dwayne Simpkins, George Mason University.
Coach, I echo the sentiments of everybody else on here who asked questions so far. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. One thing that really stood out to me when you were talking, you were recounting the story of you were walking through the tunnel with Doc, and Doc turns to you and he's like, hey, you know, what else, what more can I do? You know, kind of at a loss. I think many times as assistant coaches, especially early on, you look at the head coach and you assume that they have all the answers, but they're human too, and they've got to have a sounding board. They've got to have people that can tell them, I guess, lead them to certain things to think about and look at it a different way. What have been some of the common themes when you have talked to CEOs of companies or head coaches in terms of things that have really resonated with them, who from the people who are in the foxhole with them? Obviously, they're not going to listen to people who are not a part of the company or on the outside, but are there any common themes that you found that those guys have really brought up consistently that have helped them?
Well, the best of the best coaches and say C-suite level in the corporate world, almost not every that I've been around, but almost every one of them has a truth teller in their life, someone who will tell them the truth. We might call that a mentor, right? But and you know, and some of them had multiple ones. You just have to be careful who you let be that. I would say that came over more so than any, and that person could actually be out of the company. But they usually had some trusted people. Like, this is not going to sound good because it's going to sound like almost bragging, and I don't mean it this way, but like Doc wouldn't have turned to me and said, what else can I do, if he didn't trust me and what I might say back to him. Because he knew that I wouldn't just say anything. Like, I really believed at that point, one of his greatest attributes is his ability to get guys back up again, get them remotivated, re-energized. So that's why I simply said that to him. I said, look, you know, we got to provide some hope, right? We got to provide some hope for our team right now, because, you know, I don't know that talking X's and O's is going to do anything tonight, but they can't see you walking in defeated. If they see Doc Rivers defeated, come on, what do you think they're going to be? So the ability to have some people around you on a daily basis that you feel comfortable throwing things at. And if you are that person, by the way, for anyone on the call, just make sure that anything that's said to you from that person, that stays with you. It doesn't even go to your spouse. It stays with you. And then what was said, put great thought to it that night and see if you could even say something better and more helpful the next day. Or I might walk in the next day and say, you know what, Doc, you know what I love about you? You are so hard on yourself. Hardly anybody would have done that last night. And then you rebounded well when you got in front of the team, right? Just keep your confidence. That's all.
Thank you.
So,
All right, the next question, Russ, Tennessee.
Hey, Russ Williamson, Tennessee State. Thank you for talking tonight. This has been great. Quick question for you. I've heard Doc talk before about huddles in football and how teams should do that more. Now that you've transitioned to full-time leadership, is there other leadership styles or practices you see in other sports that you wished basketball teams would use more?
You know, I think it's more personality than it is leadership. You know, just take the two guys who I had the unbelievable fortune to walk into their offices, and I knew at the beginning of last year I wouldn't have had the opportunity to walk into either. The Nick Saban story and the Dabo Sweeney. Incredibly, well, they bang heads every year, it seems like. Totally different. When I'm in Coach Saban's office, I mean, you know you're in there and it's kind of more formal, right? You're still going to have a discussion. I didn't know he loved basketball as much as he did. I didn't know that. So that broke the ice, right? And I saw on my way into his office, I saw a picture of Kobe up on the wall and a quote from Kobe. And then it dawned on me, Kobe spoke to them. So that became a point of discussion. But if you take a Coach Saban that kind of way, hey, if Kevin could be here from 11 to 11:29:42, that would be great, right? And then you go to Dabo Sweeney, and after I get done with him, he says, hey, I'm going to call my one of my assistant ADs and get him to tour the facility. So we're getting done the tour because he had to go get his practice gear on to get out to practice. We get done the tour. We're walking around towards their sliding board. You know, they have a sliding board in their facility. So all of a sudden, like out of the corner, which is like the sliding board's over here, if you can see my hand, we're over here. I hear from the back, hey, Kevin, did you get a good tour? I don't see anybody when I turn around. Then at the bottom of the sliding board, who pops out of there? Dabo Sweeney. Coach Saban's not doing that. He's not doing that, but they are both successful. What I've learned the most is most of them lead similar. The philosophy of leadership in terms of communication, in terms of your culture, in terms of the standards you put in there, that's fairly similar, but it's the personality they inject into their leadership style that were the differences for me. But I will tell you this, even though it's not a leadership talk today, in my study and the way I try and simplify things, I have this concept that I call real leadership. And those letters stand for something that I think all the great leaders have. The R stands for relationships. The E stands for example. We talked about both of them. Example is be who you want them to be, right? The A stands for attitude, because some days it's, as a leader, it's not what you know, it's what you bring that day. That's where Doc was outstanding. When we were on a losing streak, it wasn't the X's and O's we knew. It was what he brought that day to make sure we got something out of that practice, and we gave them confidence going into the next game. And then the L stands for listening. The great leaders listen. And I'll just throw this question out to all the people that are on the call tonight. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you listen to respond, or do you listen to understand? The best leaders do the latter, right? They don't have a response yet because they don't know what's coming out of the other person's mouth. And that's a big part of relationship building, is listening long enough and focused enough to try and get an understanding of what's really coming out of that person's head. So, but nothing really like jumped out as major differences, because you know what? The corporate world, they want to know what all the coaches are doing. And coaches, well, I know the ones that I know, they're curious as to what the corporate world's doing. And in terms of the leadership, the mechanics and functions of leadership, there's not a lot of difference.
All right.
Anybody else?
Yeah, we got two more questions for you, Coach. Eric Skeeters, head basketball coach at Delaware State University.
Coach, first and foremost, privileged to sit at your knee a long time ago, 2003 actually, went and watched one of your workouts in Virginia. And my question, because the results are very good from every example that you gave in regards to DeAndre Jordan and the buy-in and how we can see now the results. But my question is, when you come across a player, and you've been at every level and been successful at every level, obviously to the pinnacle and winning the NBA championship, how can we remedy when a guy doesn't buy in? You see it, he doesn't see it. So DeAndre Jordan sprint the floor versus run the floor and rebound and get guys open. And we could see that he made the adjustment in his career, and the Clippers were more fortunate because of that. But when you get in like the stories of maybe the conflict with Rajon Rondo and his teammates at Boston, but yet you guys are fortunate enough to play in 2 championships and win one. How can you remedy when a guy doesn't see what you see, doesn't buy in, and to get them to buy in?
Yeah, for us, we just try to keep finding ways. If one way didn't work, we would try and brainstorm and find another way. Without knowing the particular player, it's always hard to say what my exact strategy would be with that player. But we're not going to give up, especially if we feel that like he can really help us and we can really help him. I like to talk to players a lot about where do you want to go in this game, right? Because the biggest thing that they have to understand is, and when I was an assistant, it was easy for me to say this. Do you know why I get input in practice? Because I've earned Doc's trust. Like right now, maybe you're not getting the time you want, the minutes you want, the role you want. Look, in order to earn playing time, you must first earn trust. Now, if you want, I'll sit down with you and tell you ways you can earn the trust of Doc Rivers, right? Or I would have that conversation. Another conversation I've had with players is, in the beginning of the year, I always ask them where they want to go this year in their game and all that. And then they tell you, it's usually a pretty high level they want to go. And then at that time, in those early parts, I'll always say something along the lines like, okay, so it's not going to be easy to get there, right? They all say yes. Haven't ever had a player in 35 years say no. And that there's going to be times where you'll probably have a little slippage, right? Oh yeah, coach, I know I can't be perfect. I said, okay, that's where I have the problem, because I don't really know what to do. I know what I should do as a coach, but I don't know if it's going to work with you. They all say, what is it? Well, I'm probably going to have to get on you. I'm probably going to have to correct you. I may even have to raise my voice. And I don't know how you're going to accept that. Oh, I'm good, coach. You can do that to me. I said, are you sure? Yeah, you can do that to me. Are you sure? Yeah, you can do that to me. I might ask him that 5 times to the point where he's upset at the end saying, why do you keep asking me that? Because I'm still not sure. Because it's October. And where I'm really unsure is December. And I sure as heck know in February, I ain't going to have any confidence that this is going to work. Yeah, it will. Okay, then can I keep reminding you? Yeah. Okay, so then I would just gradually keep working on them about, look, you say you want to get there. And right now, you're not earning Doc's trust. And if you ask me, should Doc trust you right now? I got to tell you, John, I don't think so. But I'm not going to come at him like this. And I'm going to just keep trying. It could be the articles. It could be YouTubes of his favorite player. I could say to one. I've said this to a player: who in the league is getting more playing time on their team that you think you deserve more playing time than him on our team? They always name a player. Could be Redick from the Clippers. Okay, let's break down Redick film. Let's really break down Redick film. And then boom, here's what he's doing. Here's what he's getting done. And if I have the relationship, they'll at least listen. This has been my experience. But we can't change every player. Doc taught me that too. Doc said one time, sometimes you got to get out of them what you can get out of them. Right? So, and then you come to that decision time of, do we keep him? When he becomes a cancer, that's the hard part.
We can't trade him though, coach.
Yeah. Well, actually now it's even hard to trade. Trust me, we wanted to trade a few of the guys that we had in LA and couldn't, right? That's why I say, as an assistant coach, you can't give up. Only the head coach, when he says that's it, we're getting rid of him, or the GM in the NBA. So I just kept trying to find different ways to get into them, right? Just try and get deeper into them if I could. And if I knew they had someone in their circle that I might be able to work through, I might try that. We were always concerned at who their real circles were. Not concerned as in negative, just, okay, like I give a perfect example. We had one player in our pregame, our preseason dinner that Doc always had. And he usually asks 3 or 4 players in the preseason dinner to stand up, and he'd ask them a question. And let's say, I don't want to say the player, but let's say Bill. Hey, Bill, if you had one life or death decision to make, who would you call? You only get one call. Well, we all knew Bill would call his father because we knew how close that relationship was. So I would say to my guy, I bet you $1 million. He says his dad. And he said, oh, that's easy. I called my brother right away. We didn't know that, right? So when the Clippers tried to re-sign this guy, guess who they spent a lot of time with? The brother. Because the brother was the tightest part of this guy's circle, right? Others were in it, but that was the one that he really listened to. So we tried to find out, and actually that year we sent some messages to this player through the brother. Like, hey, if he really wants to do this, he got to do this. So, but that's all. Do you trust the people around them, and can you do that with them? It's all an evaluation of the relationship, and can you trust those people? So.
Next question, Cliff Warren, Georgia State.
Hey, Kevin. Again,
Hey, Cliff.
Good to see you again. Always a pleasure to hear you. Kind of got a long 3-part question. How/when did you know you wanted to get into coaching? How/when or what drove you to get better? And then how/when did you know you wanted to transition in what you're doing now? The reason I'm asking that question, Kevin, is you've been around this, and I say this with all respect, you've been around this basketball game longer than most of us on this Zoom call. So I'm going to assume when you got in, you weren't making $1 million. Now, people that are getting into college coaching, they are making lots of money. And that's kind of why I'm asking those questions. The beginning, the middle, what drove you, and then towards the end of getting out of the college coaching business.
Well, the how and when in the early part was pretty easy. I had a chance to play in a league that took the place of the old ABA. It was called the AABA. And then that eventually folded. They had a franchise here in Richmond. They were called the Virginians, I think, or something. But that folded. So I had to do something. I loved the game. I loved being around. I loved the gym. The logical progression was to become a coach. And I enjoyed helping players get better, either motivating my teammates when I was a player, those sorts of things. So that's kind of what got me in there. Then I think the second part was, how did you try and continually better yourself? I don't know why I have this, but I have a curiosity gene. And then I also have this, maybe it's the comparison or the doubt meter. Like, I don't know if I know enough. I don't know if I know enough or as much as that guy. So then I would study the game more. I was always reading about sets and systems and those types of things. And it never bored me. Like, that's what I loved to read. So, who knows that there's some deep psychological thing in the back of in my history that made me more of a deeper thinker and more curious. But however I got it, right? And some I've been told, my wife sometimes says this, because my mom, like, she committed suicide when I was really young, so I don't even remember her. So what I do remember when I was young is always being alone. Even like a mile walk home from school when you're like 9 years old, that's a long walk. But my dad was working in Philly. So, and part of the way through was through the woods. And man, I knew there was going to be somebody jump out from the next tree. For some reason I had that. So maybe that was, what got me into just myself and my own thoughts. I don't know. But I just love learning. So that's why I like to continue to learn. And I love being a rookie again. Like when I first got into speaking, what I enjoyed about it is I was a rookie again, right? So I had to learn to catch up to all these speakers who are getting, however many speaking engagements a year, right? So, and now I've built mine up to whatever it is, 60 or 65 talks a year. So I'm good with that now. And then why did I eventually decide to leave coaching? You know, you probably heard from a story I told, I think, because this is my third Zoom today, so I'm not sure what I said with which group. And I loved every group. But there comes a point in your life where your thoughts change in your head. And I mentioned Oprah, maybe with the word intentional with this group. I can't remember if I did or not. But anyway, she's very intentional about what she does and how she built her company, right? So if any of you saw her last show, you will possibly remember this. She had kind of a rotating stage, really slow, like some concerts are and that sort of thing. And she was kind of in the back right as you're looking at it. And she kind of came forward and she said, I want to leave this thought with everyone in the audience. And this was the thought: take action on the things that whisper to you. Take action on the things that whisper to you. Well, my last 2 years before I decided to step away from Doc and the Clippers, I used to wake up trying to figure out, the first thought I would have would be, which Starbucks was I going to? Then the second thought on the way in, then the second thought was, how can we teach this drill better? How can I help Doc with this? What can I say to Doc this morning? What should I say in my notes before he gets in? Those were my thoughts that just permeated my head the first thing in the morning every day. Well, that last year, my thoughts changed. They were more like, man, that thing I heard on 60 Minutes last night, I could probably use that in a talk. Or, gosh, I had breakfast with George Raveling yesterday, and he said something that was really, really good that I could put into a leadership talk. So my thoughts changed. And then I got to thinking about the Oprah Winfrey thing. And what I kind of thought to myself is, you know what? Those thoughts are whispering to me right now. They're whispering to me. And I don't think change ever comes to you like this. Like it doesn't shout at you, hey, Kevin, get into speaking. It doesn't. That's too easy. It makes you pull it out. And it whispers in the back of your head, and it keeps whispering, then gets a little louder. And then all of a sudden I thought, you know what? If I'm not waking up thinking basketball right away and have a juice in my body for basketball, then I can't accept the money that the Clippers are paying me, and I can't accept it. So after the season, I had the talk with Doc, and I said, hey, look, you know, I'm pretty sure I'm going to step down at the end of my contract. It was perfect timing. I might have even had a year. I might have had a year left, but it was the time. It was the right time. You know when you know. And I really, what I said to myself is, you know what? You might know JP Clark. Okay, so you know JP from Florida and all that, yeah, down there. So JP was a really, really good young up-and-coming coach. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? He deserves to sit in my seat. I don't need to sit in the seat anymore. Let him sit in it and see what, you know, if he can have some of the neat experiences that I had. So that's how that all worked with me. And the interesting thing was, when I said that to Doc, he looked at me, and it seemed like 5 minutes. And he said, you know what? I had an inkling you might be thinking this way. And I said, oh, God, I hope I didn't do a bad job this year. He said, no, not at all. But Kevin, I've known you for 13 years now. Okay. So so that's how all three stages for me went down. And I've just been very fortunate. You know, luck has to play a part in this. But when luck comes, like that call I got on that highway, if I'd have bombed that talk, I don't have that ring. I'm not even on this talk tonight. So I've just been very fortunate. But part of it is, I think that for whoever, whether it was my dad or I just developed these, I have a strong values base, and I never deviated. And I think you have to have that in life, and especially in coaching in today's world, right? And a value is this, guys, by the way. The definition of values is not what's on the wall. A value is something you're willing to be fired over. That's a core value. Like if an AD came in to me and said, hey, look, you haven't been real good the last 2 years. I'll tell you what, just between you and me, if you want to cheat a little bit to get a little bit better player, maybe just on 2 players, bring in 2 really good players, cheat a little bit just between you and me. I'd have to tell them that I can't do that. Yeah, but Kevin, we got to win. Like, there's a lot of pressure out there. I can't do that because integrity is one of my values and following rules are one of my values. Even if I don't like them, they were put in and I decided to take the job. Those are the rules. So, so now also coaches out there, like, don't quit because I'm going to make them fire me because then they have to pay me, right? Like, I'm not dumb. I've got great values, but I ain't stupid. So I think that kind of helped me along my path. I really believe that at some point you get paid back if whenever you have the choice between right and wrong, you always do right.
Right.
All right. Next question and last question, Jerry McFarland.
First of all, Coach Eastman, I really appreciate this, as all the other coaches, you coming and speaking with us. It's funny because in my office, I have one of your quotes on the door. People don't know who you are, but it makes them think I'm great. It's all success is a process. The best in any line of work respect the process, understand the process, and are willing to stay with the process. Nowadays, it's part of it is not of having guys who kind of tap out before they really stay with the process or finish the process. What are some of your thoughts in terms of staying with the process and finishing the process?
Well, I think for those guys, depending on what level each of the coaches on this call are, certain levels, you have the choice of who you bring in. And I always say, you brought that player in for some reason. Are you getting that some reason out of them? And if you're not, then the evaluation is, was it my fault? Did I misevaluate that player? And then we've got to work on that. But, why I believe in the process so much and why we keep pounding it into our guys, like at Alabama, they're going to hear that word almost every day, Alabama football, right? So they're pounding it. They're almost brainwashing their guys. That's one way to do it. I like to do it not by brainwash, but maybe subtle brainwash, by continuing to talk to the guys about how important this is. Because process isn't just what you are doing. Process also involves, if you are working the process well, you're developing trust, right, with your teammates. That's going to help us win. You're going to develop better habits if you follow this process, because process is every day and habits are created day by day by day. So I would just kind of continue to come up with talking points that I can utilize with the player or the players, hoping that those talking points reach, they penetrate. And I also ask for feedback. Like I'll ask a guy, does this make sense to you at all? And I always tell them, you can say no. And I've had players say, no, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm doing everything you're asking me to do. And I might say, that's the problem. You're just doing it. You're just doing it. And some days I can tell, John, when you come into practice, you're just trying to get through it. You know what the best players in this league do? They get from the practice. They don't get through the practice. They get something from the practice, right? So whatever the part of the process is that they're not buying into, I'll just try and find a way to address that. Again, that's the individual player that I don't know which one you're talking about or what his characteristics are, but it's the who and the how. And I know I keep going back to that, but it was so important for us. And people always ask, what's the one thing you would do if you went back to coaching? It would be that college coaching, it would be that I would be much more aware of the relationships I built. And that doesn't mean you're with them an hour talking to them every day. You know, some of my best conversations have been 3 minutes sitting on a bench press bench talking to a player. Some of them have been at their cars, they're leaving practice, and I just happen to be leaving at the same time. So it's just, what did Lawrence Frank call them? Intentional collisions. Intentional collisions with your players to find another 3 minutes to to try and get into their head. But we're not getting into their head to take advantage of them. Like, we're getting into their head to help them get to where they want to go. And that was always my lens with which I tried to help a player. I always went back to that with them, because I had the conversation at the beginning of the year, and then periodically it might be on the plane, it might be in the bus, it might be before practice in Chicago, whatever. I would just kind of every now and then periodically find a way to talk about where they want to go in their career. And you guys, and like, I would tell a guy, you study the best players. They had a process to how they got to where they got. So like, John, you can't tell me a process isn't important. Tom Brady had a process. Kevin Garnett definitely has a process. Some will call it a routine. That's why I like to read a lot about players, because I can use other players when I'm talking to a player. And what I learned in the NBA, don't use a lot of NBA players. Use other sports players.
Coach E, I can't thank you enough. This has been incredible. 2 hours of your 2 hours of your time is priceless. Thank you so much. I want to just say to you how invaluable you have been to me in my career and to my personal development as I try to continue to share my knowledge. And like I said, this group of people here is what I call our tribe, because I have a personal relationship with everybody on here, and I value each and every one of them. You have been incredible to me, so I wanted to bring you in. I know a lot of people here have already heard about you, but I have had the pleasure of developing a relationship over a course of a year, many years, where you have just poured into me and poured into me and poured into me, and I can't thank you enough. But tonight, I think, without question, I think everybody here gained a tremendous amount from you, and I know that they're going to take it back to where they are, and they're going to continue to be the ladles that pour into their players, because our whole objective is we want to create living trophies, and that's a very important mantra of mine and everybody here. We want to just continue to grow and create living trophies by being the ladle that pours into. We didn't talk X and O because it's so much bigger than that. But I want to thank you because I can't thank you enough. So appreciate it. I want to unmute you here now, Coach. If you got any last words of wisdom that you could share with this group, would be much appreciated. Coach. Coach, can you hear me? Coach.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Well, the first thing is that I hope I was able to maybe give some more than just one thing to some of the guys on the call to make it worth their time investment to actually sit and listen. Second and most important thing is we really do, Wendy and I hope that all of you are and remain safe and healthy. And then the third thing would be, Kevin, I also have learned a lot from you. So guys who are on the call, don't think this has been a one-way street. And then the last thing is kind of the story of my life. I get muted at the house here every single day from Wendy. So don't feel bad about it. And so is everyone else on this call. So don't think I'm the only one on this call who's been muted by their spouse. All right, you guys, thanks.
Thanks so much, Coach. Appreciate it.
Now, I still may be honest because I don't know how to work the phone thing. So if I say something I shouldn't, tough. Oh, leave.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Kevin.